The Infallibility of the Bible by Voy Wilks, March 26, 1980. I too believe in the infallibility of the Bible, but possibly not in the same way that is sometimes meant when this term is used. So I offer the following for your consideration. Mr. Henry Morris says it very well indeed. Quote, I believe that the Bible, as originally given, was true and correct in every scientific and historical detail. Unquote. This being the case, I do not necessarily believe that every or any certain English version of the Bible is 100% true and correct in every detail. As most of our church members believe this also, our library has more than 40 different English versions so that we can do comparative study. It has been said that the King James Version is the only Bible which is truly correct. It is the only real Bible. However, I finally thought to ask myself, first, if the King James is the only true and correct Bible, what do people of other languages do for the true and correct message? And second, if the King James is the only true and correct Bible, what did the English people do for the true message before King James authorized this translation to be made? After all, it is of relatively recent origin, less than 400 years old. The king's men had at their disposal only 8 Greek manuscripts of the New Testament, none of which were older than the 10th century AD. Since then, of course, there have been found thousands of ancient manuscripts which date back much earlier than those used by the king's men. Some of the earliest and most complete manuscripts date to 325 or 350 AD. The King James translators, about 54 in number, also consulted the former English translations, and evidently complied with the king's request to change it as little as possible in order to modernize the language for their time. It is evident that the RSV, Revised Standard Version, which we use mostly, is not always correct, because in some cases these translators give footnotes which disagree with their text. We use it though because the language is so easy and comfortable. We use the King James for study only because of its archaic language. Now to repeat my approximate quotation from Henry Morris, quote, the Bible, as originally given, was true and correct in every scientific and historical detail, unquote. We cannot go beyond this because of such scriptures as Ezra chapter 2. There it is stated that a little less than 50,000 people returned to Israel. But add up the numbers which were given. The total is less than 30,000. The serious Bible student is not upset by this, however. No doubt it is as the translators have said, a portion of the manuscript was lost, so that the total listing of the returnees does not appear in the book of Ezra, as we have it. Perhaps an older manuscript will one day be found, which has the complete listings totaling the 49,000 plus, which Ezra calls for. A few additions to the Bible have crept in also. Examples: 1 John 5:7 and Mark 16 verse 9 to 20. Many manuscripts include both these references. But when the older manuscripts began to be found, it was discovered that the older copies did not include these verses. None of the early church writers make mention of these verses of Scripture, even when writing on a topic which would normally include them. This shows that they were added by someone at a later time. When the quote church fathers, for example, wrote about the Trinity, they used every scripture and logic at their command, except the one scripture which really supports the doctrine of the Trinity, 1 John 5:7. The reason they did not use it, of course, was because this verse of scripture was not in the Bible during their times. For this reason, this verse has been omitted from most of the translations which have been made in the 20th century. The same is true of Mark 16 verse 9 to 20. This is the one scripture which may say that the Messiah arose on the first day of the week, but is not in the older manuscripts. Therefore, most of the more recent versions either have this left out or else give a footnote stating that it does not appear in the older manuscripts. In both cases, however, it was the Trinitarians and the Sunday worshippers, respectively, who discovered this and have made corrections in the more recent versions in order to conform more closely to the most ancient manuscripts of the Bible. Sincerely, Voy Wilks. For more free literature and articles written by Voy Wilks and late Elder Chuck Henry, please download the app Assembly of Yahweh, AOY. Thank you and shalom.